Hello, dear friends, and welcome to C Sharp Full Course in 10 Days using W3 School's website. My name is Dr. Shan Bhardi, and today is day number 6. In day number 6, we're going to talk about if else statements, and we're going to learn how we actually use if else to make decisions and make logical conclusions within our system using C Sharp. Again, this is a disclaimer, this is not being officially sponsored, nor is it official W3 Schools website tutorial. I'm just using it as a reference note because I love to use this website. Before we go further, I will be showing you almost 12 different outputs or real world programs, how we use them and how we solve them. So we will solve a couple of very real world programs to make sure you understand how we work with if else. So this is going to be a real hands-on lecture today. So don't forget and bear with me and watch till the end. Okay. So without further ado, let's begin and learn if else statements and how we use if else logic within our code.
So, if else, what do we mean by if else statements, or in generally known as conditional statements? Now, this is where the main decision making of a programming language comes in. Using C Sharp's if else statements, we are able to make a decision. By decision means that in a general decision, we say if something is okay, what should we do, and if it's not okay, then what should we do? If you have an interest in this area, what should you do? If you don't have interest in this area, what should you do? Making a decision based on a certain situations. So this is where if else statements come into play. They allow us to make a decision based on a condition. Okay, so that's why they are known as conditional statements or conditional if else statements. So how do we generate a condition? We use exactly the same conditional operators that we discussed earlier. So when we talked about the operators, we discussed these relational operators or conditional operators. Less than, equal to, greater than, equal to, not equal to. These are known as conditional operators. We use them with if statements to generate a condition, and based on this condition, a decision is made what to do. Okay, and this is where the real programming decision making inside the programming comes into play. So you can use these conditions to perform different actions for different decisions. C# has the following conditional statements. If statement to specify a block of code to be executed if a specified condition is true. So when a specific condition becomes true, then this if block is executed. Then we have something called else statement. This is used to specify a block of code to be executed if the same condition is false. So usually else does not work independently. Else always works with if. If, however, can work independently. So we can have individual if statement, or we can have if and else statement. So they do work together, which means that if this one is true, executed, else execute something else. So this is like two-way binary decision that comes into play. Then we third type have else if. So again, else if doesn't exist independently. It exists with the if statement. We write the if statement, and instead of just writing else, we write else, and then we nest if inside it. So it means that if first condition is true, fantastic. Else, check second condition. Okay, so it's like a nested else if structure. Then third type is switch statement. Okay, switch statement is an alternative block of code that is used to check certain conditions. Okay, so let's explore the if statement a little bit more in detail, and then we'll talk about all of these as we go along. The use of if statement to specify a block of C# code to be executed if a condition is true. So if this is if, we write if with again if. It's a keyword, it's a reserved word. You cannot use if as a variable name or as a method name or as a class name. It's a keyword reserved by C# itself. Then here's the magic. We write a condition here. What conditions we write are based on these operators. Tuck, 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 tuck. All of these 6 operators are basically now conventionally used here. If technically only requires true and false. If, again, technically, if has a block around brackets. Within this, it needs true or false. If the condition or if this value is true, it will execute the block of code. If this is false, this block is completely ignored and not executed at all. This is how if works. So we say we need either true and false, and in order to get that Boolean value true and false, we need a condition. So only these conditions are able to generate true and false values. Arithmetic operations, for example, only generate values. 5 plus 5, 10. 10 is a value, not a true and false condition. So we need a Boolean value for that. That Boolean value can only be obtained through a certain conditional operators, these ones. So that is why most commonly we write condition here, means that we need to write these conditions. So now the logic is very simple. We write an if condition wherever we need to check a certain condition has been satisfied. If that condition has been satisfied, the answer is true in form of a Boolean value, then this block of code will execute. If the answer is false, then this code is completely ignored and nothing happens. That's where the decision making power comes into play. So note that if is a lowercase letters, upper letters if or if will generate an error. Okay, so do keep that in mind. In the example below, we test two values to find out if 20 is greater than 18. If the condition is true, print something. So we say if 20 greater than 18, is this condition true or not? So again, we need relational operators here, or conditional operators which evaluate a particular relation or check a condition. So 20 greater than 18, if this is true, print this statement, 20 is greater than 18. But what happens if I say 118 or 128, for example? Now 20 greater than 18, it becomes false, right? So because this becomes false, this statement here is completely ignored. Now this is no longer executed. So if I run the code, you should not see any output. That's the beauty of decision making. So we make a decision and we say, is this greater than or less than? If this is true, you need to do this. For example, if your password is matched, log into the system. If password does not match, redirect and ask them, hey, password was not matched. So that's a decision making statement. Okay. So this is what we do. So since see, no output here because the condition is false, this line of code is completely ignored. Again, this is a relational operator. We can write true here as well. Since true is a data type, it has a value. We can write true directly here because if technically only requires true, and if you run the code, it will print this value because it doesn't need a condition. It needs actually a Boolean value. That's a one common misconception many young developers starts to have. They think that this is a conditional statement and always a conditional statement needs to be here. That is not correct. I can write a method that can throw either true or false, and I can execute a method here as well which can generate a return in a form of true and false value. Okay, we can talk about this in methods later on, but meaning that actually if only needs true and false. So if I write true here, this works. I can write false here as well. So if I come back inside my code here and I say, I don't like this, what if I write false? So this means every time it executes, this is considered as false and this won't be executed. Khalas. Understand? Why? Because if require Boolean value, if becomes true, execute it, false, ignore it. But how to obtain this value logically? To obtain this value logically, we always need a relational or conditional value. Okay, so that is why we always use a relational operator here to evaluate a particular condition, a situation, a relation. Based on that, we get a value which is either true and false, and we have already studied this in booleans and in operators under comparison operators, because we said that always these comparison operators will return either true and false. So their return value is quite important. That is why we're going to use them here in if and else. Okay, so we can also test variables as well. So you can write, hey, integer x is equal to 20, integer y is equals to 18. If I write if x is greater than y, okay, then what should happen? So now what it's going to do, it's to say, oh, I have a variable called x, a greater than variable called y. The value of x or stored in the memory is 20, so it's going to fetch that value. 20 is greater than the value of y in memory is 18, so it's going to fetch 18 here. So 20 greater than y means greater than 18, condition becomes true, this code is executed. So you can use this expression as well, and most commonly that's what we tend to do. Okay, so in the example above, we use two variables x and y to test whether x is greater than the value of y using the greater than symbol. As x is 20 and y is 18, we know that the 20 is greater than 18 and we print the screen this value here. Okay, so this is only using the if statement. So if can be used independently. But if we move to the next step topic, it's called else statement. Else statements are used to specify a block of code to be executed when the condition of if is false. So what happens if this condition becomes false? In that situation, the control will go to else. Okay, so in this statement, when we said if 20 is greater than 2, do this. But what happens if this is like 222? Now this condition becomes false. What to do now? Now we say if this condition is false, go inside else statement and execute something else. So this can be another single line of code. Control C, for example, this thing, and we say, for example, false, else is executed. Okay, and then we run the code. So now what is this going to do? Hey, 20 greater than 22, this condition becomes false. Because this becomes false, this block of code is ignored. Okay, so do remember in spy programming we always count on these blocks. So if something is false, the entire block gets ignored in this situation. So once this is ignored and this is false, and it control will go to now else. So from this line the control will move to this else, and it will execute this statement whatever we have written inside the else statement. Because this is just a single line, I can write it here. But if there are multiple lines that you want to execute, okay, so for example, if you have this control C and you want to execute multiple lines under this else, now this will create a problem because we have not created a block. A block represents multiple lines of code. So if you have something that belongs to a block or a piece of condition, then you need to write inside a block. So this means when if is false, the control will go to else and it will execute all of the block. Okay, so it will execute all of the statements of the block. If this condition is what we call true, 20 is greater than 2, the condition becomes true, we execute the code. Now what happens? It's going to only execute the first line, and everything below it including else and the block completely is ignored. Okay, so this is how if else statements tend to work. So it all depends on this condition. If the condition is true, execute this, else execute this. If it's a single line, for example, in this case also we only have a single line, so we can write, and the space doesn't really matter, so you can leave it that. The single line is there, we can write a single line without the block of code, no problem with that. So if you execute it, there should not be any error. Okay, 20 is greater than 18, we got this output because it's a single line. But if you again use multiple lines here without the block, then it becomes a problem. So this is again one common example error issue that so many students tend to make. Because we are using multiple lines, do make sure you use a block. And sometimes people assume that without the block the code will not work. So that's also not case. That's not the right case. If you are using a single line of statement, you don't need to write a block. What happens if I don't use a block anyway? Okay, so in this case I'm not using a block. Now what should happen? Sometimes we ask this in exams as well in various different situations, that hey, I have a if, I have a block, fantastic, 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 I have an else except in a couple of lines, what should happen? So sometimes we assume that all three lines will be printed, okay, because again all three lines come under else. Or sometimes we assume that it's going to print only all these three lines. Okay, so we said no, what's happened here is that now 20 is greater than 2, so the condition becomes true, right? So it printed 20 is greater than 18. Perfect. But then it printed these two lines as well. Not the first line, second line. How do we know first line? So let me just say, for example, first line 1, and then let me copy the string. Let's be lazy, and then copy this here, and then copy this here, and then make it 2. So we know that this is 2, and we make it 3. So we know this is 3. Okay, so if I re-execute the code, now we'll notice that it will ignore the first line and it's executing line 2 and 3. Why? Because you have not used a block here. So by default the C# compiler will assume that the else has only one statement, and the rest of the code actually do not belong to else. So it will only connect one statement with else. Hence, when the first condition became true, it executed this block of code, and ignoring the first line which is associated with the else, it went on and executed the remaining 2 lines as well. That's a very critical thing. So this tabbing actually does not matter. It's just the convenience sake for our coding. So this technically represent or can be written in this way as well. Okay, so I have something like this. So this now means that if condition true, execute this, else if condition is false, execute this line, and just here. So you notice we just change the spaces and makes more sense. But in programming, these spaces does not really matter. These spaces we use for our own convenience sake, so that we can make the code readable. So now if you make this, see this, now completely the meaning has changed. We assume that all 3 lines belong to this else statement. So when this condition becomes true, these should not be executed, they should be ignored. But they are not ignored, because if there is no block here, then by default only one line becomes part of else. Same goes with the if as well. So we need to be very careful about that. If you do want these 3 lines to be part of else, then make sure you use the block here. Okay, now because we use the block, this will assume that if this is true, execute this, and then the else and all the code that is connected with the block are ignored. Hence, if I run the code, it will only print the first line. Okay, and all lines inside the else block are ignored. So this is one key aspect of logic that we need to follow. Okay, enough of that. So let's just do some more examples here. Time, integer time is equals to 20. If time is less than 18, we print console.write ln good day, else console.write ln good evening. So if you check out the code, again, it means that let's say find out the time. If time is below 18, okay, as per 24 hours, we say good day. And after 18, it becomes evening. So we say hello, good evening. Okay, so we use this if statement. If time is less than 18, condition is true, print this thing. Else, if the condition becomes false, then from this if, ignore these lines and the control goes directly to else. Okay, so from here, the control goes here and the block of code is executed. Understand? Wonderful. Okay, so this example is again explained in the same manner. Let's talk about something called else if. The use of else if statement is used to specify a new condition if the first condition is false. This is also known as nested if else if structure. Nested means if inside else inside if, right? And then this if can again further have else statement, further have if statement, further have else statement. So the way it works is that it checks the first condition. If the first condition is true, it executes this block of code and everything else is ignored completely. All these else if are ignored. However, if this is false, then it goes and evaluates else here. And within this else, because we have another if associated with this else, so this if gets evaluated and this condition is checked. If this condition is true, this block of code is executed. If this condition is false, again this block is ignored and the control goes to the next else and it executes. So it creates a multi-conditional statement kind of a loop. Okay, so for example, let's check this code. So if integer time is 22, so let's assuming that the temperature time is there. Let's assume that if the time is less than 10, right? So it's before 10 a.m. console.write ln good morning. However, if time is greater than 10, so we say else. If this is like 22, so this condition becomes false. Because this becomes false, the block of if first if is completely ignored. So the control from this, because of being false, goes to this else here. Within this else, again we have another if. So now this condition will be evaluated. So it says time less than 20. If this is true, print good day to you. If this is again is false, ignore this line, and for this if, the control will go from this if to this else, and then print write ln good evening. Okay, so if always evaluates a condition, it always evaluates an expression, as we call it, a logical expression. If the condition is true, immediate statements below if are executed, and if you have written else, that else will be executed. That else can contain another if inside it. If there is an if, it's going to check that condition. If it's true, the statement will be executed. Otherwise, control can go out. So it's not necessary that we write this else. I can end the code here, or if I want, I can write the code here as well. Depends on how basically we want to use with it. Okay, so I hope you understand it. Now, before we go further, again, there's a shorthand if else operator, which is most commonly known as ternary operator, tertiary operator, sometimes called. But I'm going to talk about this later on. Let's do few examples of if-else statements, do real-world examples, and then come back to this tertiary operator and we'll discuss switch. Okay, so now let's do examples. So I'm here now on a website called onecompiler.com, C#/. Again, this is a online compiler that you can use to compile the code. Again, don't get me wrong, W3 School's website is again fantastic. You can use the same compiler online to compile your code, but this just gives them some nice helps and make coding a little bit faster for us to work with. So I'm using this compiler as well. So if you are doing programming, you can come here and choose from various different compilers online and do the coding to much part online, and you don't need to download and install anything. Okay, this is a wonderful way of sometimes doing things easily. So let's just kill all this code. Now, the first thing that we want to do is let's start with simple thing. Check if the number is even or odd. Okay, so basic program. Let's just check whether the number is even or odd. How do we do this? Okay, even or odd. So first thing, as you know, that we will be using something called using, and then we will use system. to let the C# know that we are using the system default programs. Then we create something called namespace, and I'm going to name it, for example, dr myself. This is my package name, and I will put all my code relevant to this within this namespace. Then we need to create something called a class, and let's just give it a name called even odd. Again, any name we can give to this class. Do note that I'm starting a block of code and ending a block of code and then add the space. It just helps me to easily ensure that the block of code start and ending are all matched up. Okay, once we have that, now we need to give something called a static void, and we give main bracket start string, and then we give something called arguments, and then square brackets. Okay, now main method is there. Again, block start, block close, and then move cursor back, enter to add the new line here. That way, again, you can see this, that all closing brackets are properly aligned with all starting brackets, and just makes things a little bit easy. Now, the idea is that we take integer, and for example, I can save number, and if the number is 3, I want to find out that whatever value is saved inside this number is either even or odd. So we just take a variable, or you can take an input from the user as well. So now we write something called if condition. So we need to evaluate whether this number that we just entered is even or not. So the easiest way to do is find a remainder. So we use a percentage sign remainder and find the remainder equals to 0. And then block start, block close, bracket. What we did now is we evaluate a condition, an expression that allows us to find out the remainder and then use a conditional statement to check whether that remainder is 0 or not. So in this one if statement, actually we are performing a calculation, and then whatever the answer of that calculation comes is being compared to this value 0. So this is again a perfect legitimate answer. So eventually this will return true or false to us after completing this entire expression. So first it will find a remainder, then equal to is 0 or not. So whatever is the remainder of 2, if the remainder is 0, means the number is even. So let's just print a simple message. We say console dot write 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 line and inverted quotation marks, and we can say the NUMBER number plus, and let's just print the number here again. Oops, now this one, NUMBER number plus inverted quotations is EVE and even. Okay, and then let's just put a semicolon. Don't forget to put a semicolon. So now what we did was we used this number inverted quotations as a string, plus whatever number we enter here will be used here to print within this string is again even if the remainder is 0. So let's just execute this code by clicking on this run button, and it says compilation error failed, 0 warning, array type must be specified, must appear before the parameter name. What? Oh, okay, sorry. I think this is the issue. We need to use this at the right place. And then the program did not output anything because we have a 3 here, and this condition becomes false. So we took a number divided by 2, the remainder came 1. Obviously 2 divided by 3, there will be 1 remainder, is equals to 0. It gives basically false result. Since this if is false, this line is ignored. Hence this compiler will tell us, this is again not the official C++ C# output, it's just the way this online compiler works. They tell us that, hey, there's no output from this program. Okay, so that way we know that there's no output. Perfect, this is exactly what we wanted. So if in this case, what if the if returns false, what should I do now? So this is where the else statement comes into play, and we write again something, console dot write line bracket start bracket close inverted quotation start and close, and we will use the same string. So we can say the number inverted quotations close plus add the value of this number here. Okay, and then plus join this entire string with this string is odd. Okay, and then make sure we give a semicolon here. So if the number is 3 here, the value will be fetched from the memory. 3 divided by 2 or 3 mod 2, whatever is the remainder is then compared with 0. If this becomes true, this statement is executed and everything else is ignored. However, in this case, this statement becomes false. Hence, the first line is ignored and else statement is executed. And whatever is underneath the else will be executed. So if I run the code, we should see the number 3 is odd. The output is coming from this line. The number and the 3 is coming from this number value, which we have concatenated with this string value. Okay, and is odd. So if I give, for example, 22 and then run the code again, the number is even.
Perfect. That's exactly we wanted. So you see, a very simple if-else statement allows us to understand how the logic is working. Okay. Using the same thing, let's just create another program to understand how more complex form of if and else can work. Okay. So I will create another window of this one compiler, or we can just create a new code, come back here, and then let me add, where's my one compiler gone? Sorry. Okay, so I reload this thing. By default, every time you open it gives you a dummy text. You can use that, no problem with that, but for our sake I just want to start fresh so that we get into habit of typing everything. So now what we're going to do is we can create a grade system for mark sheet. Okay, and the way it's going to work is that if the grade is, and then now I'm going to use multi-line comment here, oops, backslash static, and then static backslash. So multi-line means multiple lines I can write without using these backslash for every line. Okay. So within this now we say that if your marks are between a grade, if grade or for no, not grade, if marks are, so if your marks are between 0 and 39 is equals to, you are basically fail. However, if your grades are from 40 to, for example, 59, you get what we call D grade. Okay, and then again this depends on your grading system, however you want to follow up. But if you get 60 to, for example, 70, 70 I guess is equals to, you get a B grade or a C grade. Okay, and then if you get something, okay, let's just make this, usually if I follow correctly this is supposed to be 69, and then we start from 70 to something of an 79, oops, dash 79, you get something called a B grade. In fact, in most cases, yeah, that works fine. Then anything from 80 to 89 will render us A grade. And if you get anything from 90 to 100, you get something called A plus. Okay, so now you know there are multiple conditions and the range that we need to evaluate. Based on what your mark is, we need to evaluate. If your marks is between 0 and 39, you are fail. If you get 40 of between 40 and 59, you get a D grade. If you get between 60 and 69, you get a C grade. If you have a 70 and 79, so it's basically 10 increment all the way, and we need to check the range that your marks are between these range. To do that, let's just start working with the program. So first thing we do again is we say using system semicolon, and then I'm going to say, hey, I want a namespace. Again, I'm going to use the same namespace. You can do whatever you want. Okay, called bracket start bracket close. Then we know that we need to create something called a class. So we say, hey, there's a class, and I'm going to say mark sheet. So this becomes my class name. Okay. Then within my class name, I'm going to create something called static void, and then I'm going to use something called main bracket start string. In fact, s is supposed to be small, string inverted quotations arguments, and then again block start block close, and then I move a cursor back and press enter to add this space. So that way I have correct number of closing tags and correct number of starting tags. So within this, let's just create something called integer marks is equals to, for now let's just make it 10 marks, bad boy. Now how do we write this range? How do we write an if else statement that allows us to have this particular range? To do that, we write if your marks is less than, equal, or less than 40, for example. Okay, so if your marks are less than 40, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to do console dot write line bracket start bracket close inverted quotations. We say your marks are, and then we plus add the marks. So we tell this guy that, hey, these are your marks, and then again add a string inverted quotation marks, and we say e equal to for example fail, 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 and then don't forget to give a semicolon at the end. So if your marks are less than 40, you are fail. Understand? Perfect. So let's just run this code and see if it runs at this point. So this says hey, your marks are 10 equal to 40, fail. Okay, or you can, instead of equal, you can just use is equals to fail. Okay, so if I now run it, because I've made some changes, I say, hey, your marks are 10 is equals to fail, you become fail. So it depends whatever string you want to do. It's just really no matter. So now I have 40. What happens if I get exactly 40 marks? Okay, what will be the output now? Will this condition be true? Because we are evaluating an expression. So it says marks less than 40. So if I run the code again, this is going to say program did not generate any output. Why? Because my marks are 40 and this condition is evaluating less than 40. Anything less than 40 will render this as true. Anything from 40 and above, it will be false. So if I give it 39, okay, and run the code, it will say you have failed. So 39 is exactly less than 40, but 40 and above will basically be false. So in this case, let me just copy this line, okay, so that we can be a little bit lazy later on. We write else, and now I need, inside this else, I need to say, hey, what should I do? So I do again if, and then bracket start bracket close, and I'm going to now write a more complex conditional statement. I'm going to say else if this is false. For example, if my marks are like somewhere around 79, what should I do now? So I say, okay, if your marks are not less than 40 and they're greater than 40, so we're going to check, okay, if your marks are greater than equal to 40 and your marks are less than 50, then you're going to do something called this thing, and you get what we call D grade. Okay, so now what this expression is doing is, let's just try to explore this. What this expression is doing, it's checking the range as per this requirement, 40 and 59. So we want our D grade to be between this range. To achieve this range, we wrote two expressions with AND operator. Now we have discussed all this already. So we're checking, hey, marks must be greater than, and this time I've used equal to. So if I use 40 here, this should be true condition, because now I have done equal to. If I don't use equal to, again 40 will give false and no output will be generated, because 40 is not less than 40. This will be false. It will then come here if marks are greater than 40. Again, greater than 40 is not 40. Okay, greater than 40 means 41 and above. So this will again be false. So I need to use equal to sign here. So the first condition, it needs, hey, your marks have to be 40 and above 40, including the 40 itself. Okay, because we have used equal to, and because we have used AND operator here, this will again go and check the second condition. The second expression is, now your marks needs to be less than 50. Okay, if you want to be specific, you can use equal to here, and then you provide, for example, 59 here. Okay, which basically means that exactly what we need, 42 for 59. So we, if you want to use double equal to, or because we know that 59 would be equal to 60, so we can just use the 60. Now it depends on how intelligently you're working, what exactly you want. Both these expressions will give us the same thing. So if you are using less than 60, less than 60 will basically mean 50. But if you are trying to understand that I exactly want 59, so just use equal to, and then make sure we provide 59 here. This again is also equal, fine. So this means equal to and less than 59. This is greater than and equal to 40. So we provided this range here, 40 to 59. If this is true, we would, what should we do? So now we have something called 40. We run the code and we get 40. Your grade is D. Okay. What happens now is, first it checks this condition. Since this becomes false, this line is ignored and control is moved to the else statement. Inside the else statement, because else has another if, so now it's going to check another condition. And this if is a little bit more complex. It says I need to evaluate two sides of an expression, and both need to be true because and is there. So what happens if I give marks which are like, for example, 60, or let's just make it 70 to be more permanent. So if I run the code now, it says program did not generate anything. Why? Because we have given it explicitly a range. Both of these needs to be true. Marks needs to be greater than equal to 40. This side is true. This becomes true. Said, I agree, this is true. However, when it goes here, and marks must also be less than 59, greater than 40 and less than 49. So this and actually plays that physical and. There's no if, but, else, or. It has to be that both of these conditions need to be true. So this is where and play a vital role. If I use an or operator here, okay, and I set it to 70, this, if I run the code, guess what happens? Exactly. Because now we have given it a choice, or a real choice. Hey, do this or you can do that. Marks needs to be greater than 40 or marks needs to be less than 59. So because the marks are 70, the first side of expression became true. Grade needs to be greater than 40. Yeah, it's greater than 40, 70. So it says, hey, because one is true and we have a choice because of this or operator, so this whole expression became true and console log's right line got executed with a D grade. So that means we rendered an invalid output. This should not be there. So there's no error in code. Code is working fine. This is not the code error. This is not a compile time error. This is what we call the logical error. Logic means that your logically there's issue in your code. Syntax wise there's no problem, the code is working fine, but the how you develop your programming logic is key thing. And that key thing is that I don't need or operator here, I need an and operator here to ensure a strict rule between 40 and 59. Understand? So, perfect. So if you understand this, now we just follow. What happens if my marks are 70? So this also becomes false and we get no output. So we again go another else. We say, okay, if this condition is not satisfied, then go to else and do another if check. Now check whether my marks are greater than equal to 60 and my marks are less than equal to 69. Okay, if that is the case, then what you do is you control V, you go here and you print this line. So if this condition becomes true, you print this line and you say your marks are, for example, C grade, okay, with the semicolon. Okay, so this is an example of nested if else statements. So now it will check, hey, is the range true here? If the range is true, this will print. If this range is again false, now I write another else, I write another if, again I check, hey, listen, if it's not the case, now check if the marks are greater than equal to 70 and marks are less than equal to, for example, 79. Okay, because as per our, oops, what happened? Oh, no, 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 no. We missed it out. Anyway, so let me just copy it. I think I changed the window here. So we write else if marks are greater than 49 and we say 60 and we say 69. Let me just retype this thing. Your grade is C. Okay, then come back here. I usually like to give this tabs. This tab allows us to understand the code more appropriately. This is more professionally, more people do recommend you to use this. See, so we follow a nested structure as we go. So now we say, okay, if your marks are above 70 and less than 79, okay, so this is what we want go for. So now you get something called B grade. Perfect. Okay, so if I execute this code right now, let me just copy this in case I mess it up again. Okay, so and this time I get something called, you get a D grade. Why do I get a D grade? A, B, C, D. Did I not run this code properly? You get a D grade. Why I'm getting a D grade? If 70, okay, I still have OR operator here, sorry, since I said I messed it up. So because the first this condition becomes true. Okay, marks is 70. I said if marks are greater than 40, true, yeah, marks are 70, they are greater than 40, or marks are less than 59. But because this becomes false, like, because we are using OR operator here, it needs only one side to be true from left and right. So because this is true, the if becomes true and this line is executed and all the lines below it are completely ignored. Hence we are getting the D grade. Remember, as I said, I just moved the page back, so we got back to this point. So we again remove this logical error and make sure we come to the proper conclusion. Once you understand this, control C this line again. And now for this next part, again, I'm going to write another condition. So if this is false, now you need to check if your marks are greater than 80 and 89. Okay. If this is true, if this becomes true, then what I'm supposed to do, let me run this code again. And now we get a B grade. So if my marks are 70, this means that it's going to check here. Marks, is it less than 40? This becomes false. The control goes to this else. Marks greater than 40, true, but and marks need to be less than 59, less than equal to 59. So this condition becomes false. Because this is false, AND operator will convert this whole expression into false, because AND needs both to be true. So from control from here will again go to this else, and this line is again ignored. This else again contains another if inside it. So now this if will be evaluated. If marks are greater than 60 and marks are less than 69, then execute this. But again, this becomes false because marks are greater than 60, true, but AND forces it to ensure that the both sides are true. So the both side 69 less than 69, this becomes false. Hence the whole expression is false. The control from this if now jumps to this else. Inside this else, we again have another if. And now we check, hey, are your marks greater than equal to 70? You said, yep, true, agree with that. And your marks are less than equal to 79, agreed, true. So hence at this point, both of these becomes true. So it prints a B grade here. So your marks are 70, which is actually B grade. And this should be actually A grade. Finally, we say control V one more time, come back here, that if your marks are above 90 and less than 100, now you need to print your marks are this, and I can write congratulations, da-da-da, you got what we call A plus. At least A plus deserves a congratulations, right? There we go. So now we have this thing. Finally, what happens? I mean, let me just make this A plus. I want to see this, the 99. So what if I got a 99 marks out of 100? I come back here and I say run the code. Ta-da! Congratulations, you got A plus plus. Your marks are 99, you got this. So now see, this is an example of nested if-else structure, where our code is nested into multiple logical conditions. We have this expression here. These are the user requirements we try to satisfy, and each user requirements has a range. For that range, we use this marks greater than and less than symbol. Finally, I want to do, what if I give marks and I became overexcited and I say, hey, my marks are 101. What should happen now? So if I run the code again, it says, hey, nothing. I didn't get any output. Why? Because I entered an invalid number in my marks. Okay, because this condition became false, this false, this false, this false, this false, all the conditions becomes false. So at the end there's an if, so it's not necessary to write else every single time. It depends exactly how you want to do the code. So for example, if you do want to write it, we can come here and we can say, listen, let's just move to this point and come here. Oops, tap 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 tap, and at this point I write else, and I'm again going to write, listen, if this is the case, write console dot write line method, and we say inverted quotations, please enter marks between 0 and 1, okay, 100. Okay, and then we just gonna go this way. Make sure you give a semicolon at the end, and now this is how it looks like. So let's just check this. So now if you run the code, please enter marks between 0. So we provided an error message as well. So if you give any number outside 0 and 100, it's going to give us this message. Understand? So this if finally this also is false, it will come to else. So now I have not used if here. I don't need to. It depends on the logic. So this is what you need to understand whenever you're doing programming. You need to understand various different logics of solving a problem. There might be errors in the code, but there might be errors in your logic. And this logic means you start working with this. So I will be sharing a complete manual of programs that you can practice and do the task in the description. So I'm still working on it. So hopefully by the time I finish this video and upload it, I already finished those questions and I will share the links with you. So you can actually go and start practicing many different tasks just like this one. Okay, fantastic. Control A, Control C, copy this code and save it if you want. I don't think so they have a download option as per I understand, but it just gives a tooltip, very easy to write and use it. You can do the same coding in this one as well. So this is another example of what we call if-else statements. Okay, so now let's do one more program, and this is like a very simple discount calculator. Okay, so the idea is to
count discount based on age. Okay, so the idea very simple. We take age from the user. Based on the age, they get a particular discount. How do we do that? Again, every program begins with using system. So we write that. Then we write something called namespace. And then again, I'm going to go give a same namespace so that all code belong to my same thing, Zishan C sharp, block start, block close, enter. Then we create the class, CLA class, and we're going to say DISCO unit discount, block start, block close, and then again, static void m capital main bracket start string block start arg argument, and then outside the block bracket start bracket close, enter. Okay, so assumingly integer age is equals to, for example, 12. Now based on this age we need to calculate how much discount we are supposed to get. Okay, so for example I say, okay, if your age is equals to greater than or let's just make it simple as that. So if your age is less than equal to 12, then what do you get? You get console dot write line print inverted quotations, you are free. Okay, okay, perfect, semicolon. But what happens if your age is like 14? Okay, so now if age is 14, what should we do? So that means that if age is less than 12, you're free. However, so we write else if bracket block start block close, and we're going to say if your age is greater than equal to 13 and your age is less than equal to 18, or let's make it 17, right? This is a standard age. So if this happens, if your age is between 13 and 17, then we say, listen, because you are between 13 and 17, this time console dot write line bracket start bracket close inverted quotations, you get 20%, or let's just make it, oops, you get 25% discount, semicolon. However, if your age is greater than 18, so we say else if age is greater than equal to 18, then what I'm supposed to do is I'm going to write console. Now do also note that at this point we are not using blocks for if and else. Typically you should. Okay, maybe you'll do this in the next example. So write line inverted quotations, and we can say you get like 15% discount since you are adult. Voila. Else, but then again everybody above 18 or something else that works, right? So in this case, if I just leave it here, I can. This means anybody who's above 18 gets a discount. Perfect. So we have 14. If you run the code, you get 25% discount. Why? Because your age is 14. So if you want to print that message, we can do that. Inverted quotations before this, and then we can say your age is space plus the age variable. So we concatenate this age variable with this. So whatever is inside the age variable, what the value here will be basically concatenated with this. But then we also need to add a plus here, so that then whatever is the outcome of this expression is then concatenated with this one. Hence, if I run the code, it says your age is 14, you get 25% discount. But now notice 14 and 25 are joined together. That's because this u starts immediately after inverted quotations. So we need to give a space here so that if I run the code, now it appears more readable form. Perfect. So you can select this, Control C, and we can add here and give a space before this u, and we can add the same string here and then give a space here. That means that if my age is, for example, 24, I run the code and it says your age is 24, you get 15% discount. Okay, so this becomes a very simple if-else program that we created and then allows us to develop the logic. Hopefully you understand that. So that's the idea behind it. You understand things and then you develop statements that allow you to work in a various different situations. Let's try another example now. Okay, so now let's just do this program called check voter eligibility. Okay, so condition is if you are 18 and above and have your what we call the national ID card, okay, uh, of, for example, Malaysia, then you can vote. You can vote. Okay, so simply this is the basic conditions. Now using again same thing, so we say using system. Okay, obviously can copy the basic boilerplate every single time, but I'm writing it again and again, so it just, if you write again and again something, it makes you remember it more easily. So I'm writing this again and again for you, and I hope you do this initially so that you understand this and remember it as well. So we need to write using, then we give a namespace, then we write something called class, and I can say check voter. This becomes my class name, and then I'm going to say fantastic. Let's just use something called static, make it void with capital M main. Then inside it we use a string, square brackets for array sign and arguments, again block start, block close. We have this code. So we take integer, again age, and let this be, for example, 22, semicolon here. And then we're going to take another variable called string, and we say have nic is equals to, and we can use yes or no, or in this case we can say, for example, boolean, bool, bool. Okay, because I just need yes and no. So if this is the case, I can say yes, and then I can say bool is malay Malaysian. Sorry, I'm using Malaysian because I'm from here. MALAYSIAN Malaysian, and we say is equals to yes. So this time I'm using three variables to check different conditions. Okay, so that's the idea. So we are checking the age, we are checking that have they their own NIC, and then we check whether they have their is their Malaysian status okay or not. Fine. So we use if block, and we say if age is equals to or is greater than equal to 18, and now what we need to check, have an IC and is Malaysian. That's it. Why we use these three variables? There's no expression here. Okay, because this is a Boolean variable, and in terms of using an expression here, they return true and false. So this again already is a true or false. This again is already a true and false. So since we have created a Boolean variable, now this becomes a perfect example where you can directly use a Boolean variable without writing any comparison. We don't need to check if have nic is equals to true, because again that expression we can do that. Okay, if I can write this as true as well. What this would mean that check whether nic is equals to true. This would work fine. But this again would return either true and false. And since we already have a Boolean, so either this value will be yes or no. Do you have an IC? Are you Malaysian? So in this case, we don't even need to write that. So we directly use the Boolean value here, because again, remember, every expression will generate an true and false in form of Boolean. So if needs a Boolean, and will again check two conditions based on Boolean. So if we have a Boolean directly, we use the Boolean variables here. For this as well, I can write this as true, but there is no need to write this extra word because already this is a Boolean. So if this is true, it's already true. If this is false, it's already false. So I don't need to check it. In that case, I can say, for example, now, again, if I remember, I talked to you, you need to have a block. So sometimes, again, the good practice is block start, block close, close it. So this is not mandatory if you are using printing a single line, just like in previous example. So because we were just printing a single line under if, we did not need the block. However, if you want to print multiple lines, in this case, we all try to do that, and then you will need that block. So we can say console dot write line, again L capital, keep in mind inside the inverted quotations, congratulations congratulations. Okay, you are eligible. Okay, if you want, we can say hello console dot write line, and we can say you age is, and then plus, and I can use the age variable here, semicolon. Okay, do note that we have a method called write as well, remember, so we can write console dot write as well, and not line, just write, and I can say your age is this, and you have your NIC, plus I can print this value, have NIC, semicolon, then I can say console dot write, and then I can say, and it seems you are MALAY Malaysian as well. Okay, and then plus I can say is Malaysian. If no, this is not needed, but I'm just printing it. And then finally I can say congratulations, you are eligible to vote. Now, what this basically means that inside this, if this condition becomes true, it will perform all these given set of instructions. So this block of code represents that if the condition is true, all these statements will be executed. If the condition is false, then nothing will be executed. Okay, so let's execute this and see how the things are working. So compile error, there are two errors in this code. That says the name yes does not exist and is the current context. Oh, sorry. Well, my bad. You're not supposed to say yes. We're supposed to say, bros, true. Ah, true. There we go. Okay. And then again, as I said, we can write this or we can just omit this one out. So let's just run the code again. And excellent. So we now get an output, but this is exactly what I wanted to show you. Your age is 22 and you have an NIC, true, and you are a Malaysian as well. True. Congratulations, you are eligible to vote. The key thing here is everything is printed on the same line. Why is that? Because we use the write method. Because we have used the write method 3 different times, the write by default will print the same line or will print the string on the same line, and it will not add a new line. This word line here refers to adding a new line after this text. So at this point, for example, I want there to be a new line. So this write ln, I can write as a write line. This would mean that it will print these three on the same line. After this third line, it will add a new line. So now if I execute the code, it says you are age is 22. Let me just kill this. I hate that. Your age is 22 and you have NIC, and it seems that you are Malaysian as well. Okay, true. And then we say congratulations, you are eligible to vote. So now note this, the congratulations message is printed on the new line. However, the first three lines are still printed on the same line because the write method means print the string, and then add a new line. So this align will add the new line after the string has been printed. Okay, so these three lines get printed on the same line. So if you want to use that, perfect. If you don't want to use that, if you want every line to be on the new line, you just write the line method. But do note that adding the line word will add a new line after the string has been printed on the console. So now you get it. However, what if you are not? So we check else. Okay, and then again, else can have a block of statement. And if I can do this, I can print all these things. Oops, let me just copy this, be lazy, control C, bring it here, and I can say console, your age is this, you do not, you have NIC, or just make it this way, and it seems you let's just change this, you are Malaysian, and I'll just remove this word as well so it makes a little bit more sense. Sorry, you are not eligible to vote. Okay, so in this case, for example, if any one of them becomes false, if I run the code now, it says 22, you are okay, your age is 22 and you have your NIC, which is false, you are a Malaysian, true, but you are not eligible to vote because one of the conditions become false. So let's just use a line here all the time so that everything gets printed in a better manner, makes a little bit more sense. Not in case of output I actually wanted in this manner, but here I'm getting a smaller thing, so I'm just using this, and this should do the trick. So if I run the code again, now see, more readable. You are 22, you have your NIC, which is actually false, so you can use, for example, colon here, and then you can use a colon here, and then you can use, for example, your age is colon, and obviously since it's supposed to be string, so you can easily print that, no problem. And then you run the code, it prints colon 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 colon, makes this false stand out a little bit. Sorry, you are not eligible vote. So since any one of these conditions becomes false, true true, if I make this as false false, run the code again, you are not eligible. Why? Because we have evaluated three different conditions now. Age has to be above 18, have NIC, a boolean variable, so we just directly use the boolean variable here. So do you have NIC? Either true and false. So if you say true, means you have an NIC. Since this is a boolean value, and if requires a boolean expression to generate a boolean value for us in true and false forms, so instead of writing an expression, we directly use this variable. Okay, so that's key thing to understand. And then we use another AND here. Now this time we have used double ANDs. So we are checking three different conditions in a same if statement. If your age is above 18 and you have an IC and you are a Malaysian, so three conditions are evaluated, and we do that. Okay, so I hope this clarifies and explains few things easily. Okay, perfect. Now let's move on to our next topic, which is, where were we? I think switch statements. So let's talk a little bit more about the switch statements, and then we do few more examples of conditions that will allow us to involve switch. Okay.
Okay, guys, so this is the end of the day number 6, in which we today learned about if-else statements and all the different things that we can do with if-else, else-if, and nested if-else structure. Okay, and we did some of the real-world examples. So I hope you understand these examples. And if any confusion, anything you would like me to explain a little bit more further, don't forget to leave a comment, and I will try to reply as soon as I can, or make a separate video explaining some concepts a little bit more in detail. Okay. So next, we're going to talk more about switch in tomorrow's session, day number 7. So please subscribe, come back for day number 7 tomorrow, and we're going to see how we do switch. And of course, with switch, we're also going to explore some more real world examples and do some hands-on coding to explain things more effectively. Yeah. This is Dr. Shan Bardeen signing off.